Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I was standing outside my girlfriend's apartment door with an engagement ring in my pocket, about to pick her up for what I thought would be the most important dinner of our lives, when I heard her laughing with her best friend about how she was going to reject my proposal and watch me cry. After 3 years together, after planning what I believed would be a perfect engagement at our favorite restaurant with both our families present, Bianca was treating my upcoming proposal like entertainment, a chance to humiliate me in front of everyone we loved. Bianca and I had been together for almost 3 years when I decided that she was the woman I wanted to spend my life with. What started as a casual conversation at a meetup had evolved into a relationship that felt deeper and more meaningful than anything I had experienced before. Our relationship had developed naturally through all the milestones that couples experience when they're building something lasting together. We had survived the transition from college to working life, had navigated the stress of finding our first real jobs, and had supported each other through family challenges and personal setbacks that tested our commitment and compatibility. I had introduced Bianca to my parents during our first Christmas together, and she had immediately fit into my family dynamic. Bianca seemed equally comfortable with my family. Similarly, Bianca had brought me into her family circle, and I had developed close relationships with her parents and her older brother. These connections felt like the foundation of something permanent, evidence that we were building toward a future that included marriage and children. Throughout our relationship, Bianca and I had experienced the kind of challenges that either strengthen a couple's bond or reveal fundamental incompatibilities. These experiences had taught us that we could rely on each other during difficult times, and that our relationship was strong enough to withstand external pressures. We had also created the kind of shared history that couples build when they're planning a life together. Bianca and I would often make casual references to our future. But looking back now, I can see that there were subtle signs that Bianca wasn't as committed to our future as I believed her to be. She would sometimes deflect conversations about long-term commitment, changing the subject when I brought up topics like engagement timelines or wedding planning. Bianca would seem uncomfortable when I get into more details of our relationships, often making comments about how young we were and how much time we had to make those kinds of decisions. At the time, I interpreted Bianca's hesitance about marriage discussions as shyness or a desire to take things slowly rather than any fundamental uncertainty about our relationship. I loved her deeply and assumed that her reluctance to plan too far ahead was simply a reflection of her cautious personality rather than doubts about whether she wanted to marry me. By our 3rd anniversary, I had become convinced that Bianca was the person I wanted to propose to, and I began the process of planning what I hoped would be a memorable and meaningful engagement. I spent weeks researching engagement rings, learning about different cuts and settings, and trying to determine what style would best reflect Bianca's personality and preferences. The ring selection process was complicated by my desire to surprise Bianca, while still ensuring that I chose something she would love. I considered her jewelry preferences, paid attention to her comments about other people's engagement rings, and eventually decided to seek advice from her best friend, who had known Bianca since childhood and understood her tastes better than anyone. The friend seemed enthusiastic about helping me plan the proposal, offering detailed suggestions, and assisting me in evaluating different options for what Bianca might want. Her friend's involvement made me feel confident that I was making choices that would make Bianca happy, and that the proposal would be everything she had ever dreamed of. Based on her best friend's advice, I selected a classic solitaire setting with a round diamond that was more expensive than I had originally planned, but which she assured me was exactly what Bianca would want. The ring was beautiful and elegant, and I felt proud of the choice we had made together. This friend also helped me plan the proposal itself, suggesting that I reserve a private dining room at the Italian restaurant where Bianca and I had celebrated every anniversary since. I spent nearly 2 months organizing every detail of the proposal. The preparation felt like an investment in our future together, a demonstration of how much thought and care I was putting into beginning our engagement in a way that reflected the importance of our relationship. The day of the proposal was a Friday evening, and I had been nervous and excited for weeks leading up to it. I had taken the afternoon off work to prepare myself mentally for what I hoped would be one of the most important moments of my life. The ring box felt heavy in my jacket pocket as I drove to Bianca's apartment, where I planned to pick her up for what she believed was just another dinner at our favorite restaurant. I arrived at Bianca's apartment building about 20 minutes earlier than we had planned, partly because I was too anxious to wait at home any longer, and partly because I wanted to have a few minutes to calm my nerves before we left for the restaurant. I had been practicing what I wanted to say during the proposal, rehearsing the words that would express how much Bianca meant to me and why I wanted to spend my life with her. As I walked up the stairs closer to Bianca's second-floor apartment, I could hear voices coming from inside. Bianca's laugh, and what sounded like her best friend's voice responding to something funny. I was pleased that her friend was there, since she had been so instrumental in helping me plan the proposal. It is important to note that my girlfriend, Bianca, isn't supposed to know that I was proposing that day. I raised my hand to knock on the door, but hesitated when I heard my name mentioned in their conversation. Something about the tone of their voices made me pause and listen more carefully to what they were saying. What I heard in the next few seconds changed everything I thought I knew about Bianca and our relationship. Bianca was telling her friend about the dinner we had planned for that evening, but her description of the evening bore no resemblance to the romantic celebration I had envisioned. Instead, Bianca was talking about the proposal she somehow knew was coming with a cruel anticipation that made my blood run cold. Bianca's exact words to her friend were that I was going to propose that night, and she would say no and watch me cry after all my preparations. The casual, almost gleeful way she delivered this prediction felt like a physical blow to my chest. But Bianca wasn't finished describing her plans for humiliating me. She went on to mock how desperate and pathetic I would look when she rejected my proposal in front of everyone, since I never got the clue that she wasn't ready. Bianca predicted that I would probably beg her to reconsider, maybe even cry, and she seemed to find this prospect entertaining rather than heartbreaking. She described my anticipated reaction with a kind of detail that suggested she had been planning this cruelty for some time. I was expecting her best friend to counter Bianca on this statement, knowing how much I've poured into this, but she didn't. The woman who had spent hours helping me choose the perfect ring and plan the perfect proposal wasn't condemning this scheme designed to crush me emotionally in the most public way possible. Bianca seemed to view the entire situation as entertainment, an opportunity to demonstrate her power over me and my emotions. Standing outside Bianca's door, listening to the woman I loved planning to humiliate me, I experienced a combination of shock and rage. Every moment of tenderness we had shared, every conversation about our future, every expression of love and commitment instantly felt like a lie. The love haze that had colored my perception of Bianca burned away in an instant, and I saw her clearly for the first time. I backed away from Bianca's door as quietly as possible. I made it to my car and sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, trying to process what I had just learned. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur of anger and disbelief. I kept replaying Bianca's words in my mind, trying to understand how she could plan such a thing. The woman I had planned to spend my life with had been looking forward to watching me suffer. Back at my apartment, I sat on my couch, thinking about the 3 years Bianca and I had spent together. Suddenly, certain things now made sense. Her reluctance to discuss marriage hadn't been shyness. She probably doesn't want anything serious with me. Hours passed as I sat in my apartment, trying to come to terms with the reality of what Bianca had been planning. The restaurant reservation I had made was for 7 o'clock, and by 5:30, I had made the decision that I would not be giving Bianca the satisfaction of rejecting my proposal. I would not be providing her with the entertainment she had been anticipating. At 6:15, Bianca texted me asking if we were still on for dinner, apparently expecting me to pick her up as planned. The casual tone of her message, as if she was looking forward to a normal date rather than an opportunity to humiliate me, made me feel sick. I deleted her message without responding. By 7:30, an hour after our reservation time had passed, Bianca began calling repeatedly. I could see her name appearing on my phone screen over and over, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. When the call stopped, Bianca switched to text messages that revealed her growing confusion about my absence. Her first few messages asked where I was and whether I was okay, but as the evening progressed, her tone became increasingly angry and accusatory. She began insulting me for standing her up for a dinner that I had suggested, completely oblivious to the irony of her complaints about my inconsiderate behavior. The final text message Bianca sent that evening accused me of being selfish and immature, suggesting that I owed her an explanation for my disappearance. Reading her self-righteous indignation about being stood up when she had been planning to destroy me emotionally felt surreal. Bianca was probably acting angry that I had disrupted her plan to humiliate me. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang with a call from her best friend, who was apparently trying to determine what had gone wrong with Bianca's carefully planned evening of cruelty. This time, I answered the call, curious to see how the woman who had helped me plan my own humiliation would try to explain her involvement. The friend asked what had happened to me that evening, pretending to be concerned about my welfare while fishing for information about why I hadn't shown up. She played the role of the worried friend perfectly, expressing concern that something terrible might have happened to prevent me from keeping my dinner plans with Bianca. I didn't hold back in my response to her fake concern. I told her exactly what I thought of someone who would help a man plan a proposal, while knowing that his girlfriend intended to reject it publicly and cruelly. I explained that she was a horrible person for participating in Bianca's scheme and for pretending to care about my happiness while actively working to destroy it. She tried to maintain her pretense of innocence, stammering that she didn't know what I was talking about and asking me to explain why I was so upset with her. But I had heard enough of her conversation with Bianca to know exactly what role she had played in planning my humiliation. I told Bianca's best friend that she had known all along that Bianca planned to reject my proposal, but had never opened up to warn me about what was being planned. I pointed out that she had spent hours helping me choose a ring for someone she knew would use it as an opportunity to hurt me, and that her participation in the deception was almost as cruel as Bianca's plan itself. By this point, she was stammering and struggling to find words that might wiggle her out of the impossible position she had created for herself. She couldn't continue denying knowledge of Bianca's plans without directly lying, but she also couldn't admit her involvement without confirming her participation in a deliberately cruel scheme. I ended my conversation with her by telling her to go tell Bianca that I would never give her the satisfaction of rejecting my proposal, that I knew exactly what she had been planning, and that her cruel game was over before it could begin. I hung up before she could respond, feeling a sense of completion at having confronted at least one of the people who had betrayed my trust. Within minutes of ending my call with Bianca's friend, my phone began ringing with calls from Bianca. Apparently, she had immediately reported our conversation, and Bianca was now trying to determine how much I knew about her plans. When I finally answered Bianca's call, she began the conversation by circling around the topic of my absence that evening, acting as if she had no idea that I had planned to propose and couldn't understand why I had failed to show up for our dinner. Her performance was masterful. She managed to sound confused, hurt, and concerned all at the same time. But I was no longer susceptible to Bianca's manipulative performances. I didn't spare her feelings or try to protect her from the consequences of her cruelty. I told her exactly what I thought of someone who was evil enough to play with another person's emotions and plans for public humiliation. Bianca continued to deny knowledge of any proposal plans, maintaining her act of innocent confusion even as I explained how her behavior had hurt and betrayed me. She kept asking what I was talking about and why I was so angry, as if she genuinely had no idea what might have upset me. Finally, I told Bianca that I had come to her apartment earlier that evening to pick her up for dinner, and that I had heard her conversation with her best friend about rejecting my proposal and making me cry. The silence that followed this revelation was the first genuine reaction I had gotten from Bianca all evening. Bianca was speechless for several seconds, apparently trying to process the fact that her cruel plan had been exposed before it could be executed. When she finally found her voice, she began denying that she had meant her words the way they sounded, claiming that she had been trying to be funny and that I had misunderstood her intentions. But I had heard enough of Bianca's conversation to know exactly what she had meant, and her attempts to reframe her cruelty as humor fell flat. I ended the call without giving her the opportunity to explain or apologize, feeling like I had finally taken control of a situation that had been designed to leave me powerless. About a year after what happened, I learned additional information about Bianca that explained her willingness to plan such an elaborate deception. Through mutual friends, I discovered that Bianca had been maintaining a secret relationship with another man for most of the time we had been together. She had been dating both of us simultaneously, apparently planning to choose between us based on which proposal she preferred. The revelation that Bianca had been cheating on me throughout our relationship added another layer of betrayal to an already devastating situation. She had no plans to settle with me to begin with. Her new guy had apparently proposed to Bianca about a month after my planned proposal date, and she had accepted his offer. But according to the information I received through our social network, their engagement and subsequent marriage planning had been fraught with problems and conflicts that eventually led to the complete breakdown of their relationship. Bianca's engagement to Derek lasted less than 3 months before ending in a bitter separation that involved accusations of infidelity and physical abuse. When I learned about Bianca's failed engagement, I felt a complex mixture of vindication and sadness that I hadn't expected. Part of me was satisfied that someone who had been capable of such deliberate cruelty had faced consequences for her actions. But I also felt genuinely sorry that Bianca had thrown away the possibility of real love in favor of games and manipulation. I never took pleasure in Bianca's misfortune, even if her treatment of me had been betrayal. But I also recognized that her relationship with her new man had likely been built on the same foundation of deception and manipulation that had characterized our 3 years together, making failure almost inevitable. The experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, authenticity, and the importance of paying attention to subtle warning signs in relationships. Bianca's mixed signals about commitment hadn't been shyness. They had been evidence of her fundamental dishonesty about her feelings and intentions. I learned to trust my instincts about people's behavior rather than making excuses for actions that made me uncomfortable. Most importantly, I learned that genuine love requires honesty and vulnerability from both partners, and that relationships built on deception and manipulation are ultimately unsustainable. The proposal that never happened became a turning point in my understanding of what I wanted in a romantic partner. I realized that I needed someone who was capable of a genuine emotional connection. Looking back on my relationship with Bianca, I realized that overhearing her cruel plan was actually a gift that saved me from years of additional deception and eventual heartbreak. Her words revealed her true character in a way that allowed me to escape before making a permanent commitment to someone who was fundamentally incompatible with my values and expectations about love. The experience also taught me about the importance of surrounding myself with people who share my beliefs about honesty, kindness, and mutual respect. Bianca's best friend's willingness to participate in Bianca's scheme showed me that not everyone who appears to be a friend actually has my best interests at heart, and that I needed to be more selective about who I trusted with important information. Most valuably, I learned that sometimes the most painful experiences provide the clearest insights into people's true characters, and that knowledge, however devastating, is ultimately more valuable than comfortable illusions. Bianca's cruelty hurt me deeply, but it also freed me from a relationship that was built on lies and manipulation. The proposal rejection that never happened became the foundation for a deeper understanding of what genuine love looks like. Thank you for watching.